bum, bum. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Okay. Good evening, guys. Welcome, everyone. I'm about to elaborate on what I'm doing in 2 seconds of a shake's tail. Ooh. Rogue, hello. No throw. Good evening. I'm not going to be speaking too much longer. Just to say hello until the birthday girl is here. She's in chat in a minute and I'll explain what we're going to do for a nice chilled experience tonight, hopefully. Put the music up a little bit more. Team Magic Carp, welcome mate, welcome. How you doing, man? What's going on? What's going on? Hey, what's going on? How's everyone's nights doing? Everyone all chilled and stuff? Just do a few bits. One happy birthday stream. Invi, hello. Hopefully she's here. It's like nearly 9:30. Don't worry, you can put this on later, hopefully. Oh no, you got a cold. That's not about the cold life. Got to wrap up warm. It's raining. It's going to be really rainy for the next week. We've got some huge rainstorm coming into the UK. Just waiting for this. So, we're gonna say happy birthday to my girlfriend. She's away at the moment in the Middle East. Hello, darling. And I wanted to play a game. I tried playing Simon the Sorcerer with you tonight, but I had some technical issues. I couldn't get it to run while I was streaming. I don't know what was going on. So I come up with something else. So I'm going to read you a book because that's something we do sometimes. And everyone else can just chill and relax. It's the end of a birthday. My girlfriend's in the Middle East. Alice, she's there now. She's away. I haven't seen her for like a week and a half. And I'm not going to see her till next week. So I'm really missing her. So I did just want to wish her a big happy birthday. Do something a bit silly, but a little bit special as well. So we're going to proper chill out, relax. Is the music loud enough, guys, in the distance, in the background? Can you hear it? Xenomorph, hello, mate. From Jordan, yeah, you're in the Middle East. She's gone to 5 or 6 different countries. She's like flying from one country to another for work. And yeah, so she had to spend a birthday out somewhere exotic lands today. So I've got her Moomin Sapper at Sea book, because that's one of her favourites. And we're going to start reading, guys. Yes, this is like ASMR, I guess, but something a bit different. Ooh. I personally wanted to play the game, but I couldn't get it to work. Oh no, I can't turn the light off. I won't be able to see, will I? Yeah, that makes no sense. Okay, right, so get relaxed, get ready. Everyone else, just chill. Put me on a distance if you're going to bed. If not, come back later. Or if you just want to see if I can put you to sleep reading. And Alice, if you get sleepy, I know it's late there for you, so just tell me in chat and I'll probably cut the stream once you're like feeling sleepy and dozy in 20 minutes, half an hour. Mods, people in chat, if you could let people know, because I'm not going to read the chat anymore. I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing right now. So yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and help wishing my girlfriend, my beautiful, wonderful, amazing girlfriend, a happy birthday. She has transformed my life. And I'm hoping to celebrate her birthday with her next year. But many more to come. Okay, right, you ready? Oh, I nearly bent it. Don't bend the book. Don't bend the really old book. Sorry. And then afterwards we're doing Destiny. And I'm going to be shooting loads of aliens. Okay, so if you're really worried about the shape of my channel, don't worry. We're going back to Destiny afterwards. Okay, so here we go. The family in the crystal ball. One afternoon at the end of August, Moomin Papa was walking about in his garden, feeling at a loss. He had no idea what to do with himself, because it seemed everything there was to be done had already been done, or he's been done by someone else. Moomin Papa aimlessly potted around in his garden, his tail dragging along the ground behind him in a melancholy way. Here, down in the valley, the heat was scorching. Everything was still and silent and not a little dusty. It was the month when there could be great forest fires, the month for taking great care. He had warned the family. Time and time again he had explained how necessary it was to be careful in August. He had described the burning valley, the roar of the flames, the white hot tree trunks, and the fire creeping along the ground underneath the moss. Blinding columns of flame flung upwards against the night sky, waves of fire rushing down the sides of the valley and on towards the sea. Sizzling, they throw themselves into the sea, finished Moomin Papa with gloomy satisfaction. Everything is black, everything has been burned up. A tremendous responsibility rests on the smallest creature who can lay his paws on matches. The family stopped what they were doing and said, "Yes, of course, yes, yes." Then they took no more notice of him and got on with what they were doing. They was always doing something. Quietly, without interruption and with great concentration, they carried on with the 101 small things that made up their world. It was a world that was very private and self-contained, and to which nothing could be added. Like a map where everything had been discovered, everywhere inhabited, and there was no pear patches left any longer. And they said to each other, "He always talks about forest fires in August." Moomin Papa climbed up the veranda steps, his paws stuck in the varnish as usual, making little sucking sounds all the way up and across the floor, right up to the wicker chair. His tail got stuck too. It felt as if someone was pulling it. Moomin Papa sat down and shut his eyes. That floor ought to be revarnished, he thought. The heat makes it like that, of course, but a good varnish shouldn't start melting just because it's hot. Perhaps I used the wrong sort of varnish. It's an awful long time since I built the veranda, and it's high time it was revarnished. But first it will have to be rubbed with sandpaper. A rotten job that no one will thank me for doing, but there's something special about a new white floor painted with a thick brush and shiny varnish. The family will have to use the back door and keep out of the way while I'm doing it, and then I'll let them come in, saying, "There you are. Look, your new veranda. It's much too hot. I'd love to be out sailing right out to sea, as far as I can go." Moomin Papa felt a sleepy feeling in his paws. He shook himself and lit his pipe. The match went on burning in the ashtray, and he fetched it, watched it, fascinated. Just before it went out, he tore up some bits of newspaper and put them on the flame. It was a pretty little fire, hardly visible in the sunshine, but it was burning nicely. He watched it carefully. "It's going out again," said little Mai. "Put some more on." She was sitting in the shade on the veranda railings. "It's going out again," said little Mai. "Put some more." Said one of them. "Oh, it's you," said Moomin Papa, and he took the ashtray until the fire went out. "I'm just watching the way the fire burns. It's very important." Little Mai laughed and went on looking at him. Then he pulled his hat down over his eyes and took refuge in sleep. "Papa," said Moomin Troll, "wake up, we've just put out a forest fire." Both Moomin Papa's paws were stuck firmly to the floor. He wrenched them loose with a strong feeling of reluctance. It wasn't fair. "What are you talking about?" he said. "A real forest fire," Moomin Troll told him. "Just behind the tobacco patch. The moss was on fire, and Mama says that it might have been a spark from the chimney." Moomin Papa leapt into the air and in a flash became a determined man of action. His hat rolled down the steps. "We put it out," Moomin Troll shouted. "We put it out straight away. There's nothing for you to worry about." Moomin Papa stopped dead. He's feeling very angry. "Have you put it out without me?" he said. "Why didn't anybody tell me? You just let me go on sleeping without saying anything." "But dearest," said Moomin Mama, leaning out of the window. "We didn't think it was really necessary to wake you up. It was a very small fire, and it was only smoking a little. I happened to be going by with some bucket of water, so all I had to do was sprinkle a few drops onto it, and passing." "In passing," cried Moomin Papa. "Just sprinkle, sprinkle indeed. What a word, and leaving the fire to burn under the moss unguarded. Where is it? Where is it?" Moomin Mama left what she was doing and led the way to the tobacco patch. Moomin Troll stayed on the veranda, gazing after them. The black spot in the moss was a very small spot indeed. "Don't imagine," said Moomin Papa at last very slowly, "that a spot like this isn't dangerous. Far from it. It can go on burning under the moss you see, in the ground. Hours and perhaps even days may go by, and then suddenly, woof, the fire breaks out somewhere quite different. Do you see what I mean?" "Yes, dearest," answered Moomin Mama. "So I'm going to stay here," Moomin Papa went on, sulkily digging in the moss. "I shall stand guard over it. I'll stay here all night if necessary." "Do you really think?" Moomin Mama began. Then she just said, "Yes, that's very good of you. One never knows what will happen with moss." Moomin Papa sat all the afternoon watching a little black spot, first pulling up the moss for quite a while way around it. He wouldn't leave it to go indoors for his dinner. He really wanted the others to think he was offended. "Do you think he'll stay out there all night?" asked Moomin Troll. "It's quite possible," said Moomin Mama. "If you're sore, you're sore," observed little Mai, peeling her potatoes with her teeth. "You have to be angry sometimes. Every little creep has a right to be angry, but Papa's angry in the wrong way. He's not letting it out, just shutting it up inside him." "My dear child," said Moomin Mama, "Papa knows what he's doing." "I don't think he does," said little Maya simply. "He doesn't know at all. Do you know?" "Not really," Mama Mooma had to admit. Moomin Papa dug his nose in the moss and was aware of the sour smell of smoke. The ground wasn't even warm any longer. He emptied his pipe in the hole and blew on the sparks. They glowed for a moment or two and then went out. He stamped on the fatal spot and then walked slowly down the garden to have a look in his crystal ball. Dusk was rising from the ground, as it usually did, gathering in under the trees. Round the crystal ball there was a little more light. There it stood, reflecting the whole garden, looking very beautiful on its coral pedestal. It was Moomin Papa's very own crystal ball, his own magic ball of shining blue glass, the centre of the garden, of the valley and of the whole world. But Moomin Papa didn't look into it straight away. First he looked at his grimy paws, trying to collect all his vague, scattered and troubled thoughts. When he was feeling as sad as he possibly could, he looked into the crystal ball for consolation. Every evening of that long, warm, beautiful and melancholy summer, he had done the same thing. The crystal ball was always cool. Its blue was deeper and clearer than the blue of the sea itself, and changed the colour of the whole world so that it became cool and remote. And strange, at the centre of this glass world he saw himself, his own big nose, and around him saw the reflection of a transformed, dreamlike landscape. The blue ground was deep, deep down inside, and there, where he couldn't reach, Moomin Papa began to search for his family. He only had to wait a while, and they always came. They were always reflected in the crystal ball. It was only natural, because they had so much to do at dusk. They were always doing something. Sooner or later, Moomin Mama would bustle over from the kitchen side of the house towards the outside cellar to fetch some sausages or some butter, or to the potato patch, or to get some wood. Every time she did it, she looked as though she was walking down a completely strange and exciting path. But you could never be sure. She might just well be on some secret errand of her own, which she thought was fun, or playing some private game, or just walking around for the sake of it. There she came, scampering along like a busy white ball, furthest away amongst the bluest of blue shadows. And there was Moomin Troll, aloof and keeping himself to himself. And there was little Mai, slinking up the slope, more like a movement than anything else. You could see so little of her. She just caught a glimpse of something determined and independent, and something so independent that it had no need to show itself. But the reflections made them all seem incredibly small, and the crystal ball made all their movements seem forlorn and aimless. Moomin Papa liked this. It was his evening game. It made him feel they all needed protection, that they were at the bottom of a deep sea that only he knew about. It was almost dark now. Suddenly, something different happened in the crystal ball. A light appeared. Moomin Mama had lit a lamp on the veranda, and something she hadn't done all summer. It was the oil lamp. All of a sudden, a feeling of safety was concentrated on a single point. On the veranda and nowhere else, and on the veranda Moomin Mama was sitting, waiting for a family to come home so she could give them all their evening tea. The crystal ball became dim, and the blue all turned to black. The lamp was the only thing that could be seen. Moomin Papa stood there for a while without really knowing what he was thinking about, and then turned and walked towards the house. Well, said Moomin Papa, now I think we can sleep in peace. The danger should be over, but just to make sure I'll go and check once more at dawn. Huh? Said Little Mai. Papa, cried Moomin Troll, haven't you noticed anything? We've got a lamp. Yes, I thought it was about time we started having a lamp now that the evenings are drawing in. At least I felt so this evening, said Moomin Mama. Moomin Papa said, you've put an end to the summer. No lamp should be lit until summer is really over. Well, it'll have to be autumn then, said Moomin Mama in a quiet way. The lamp sizzled as it burned. It made everything seem close and safe. A little family circle they all knew and trusted. Outside this circle lay everything that was strange and frightening, and the darkness seemed to reach higher and higher and further away, right to the end of the world. In some families, it's the father who decides when it's time to light the lamp, muttered Moomin Papa into his tea. Moomin Troll had arranged his sandwiches in a row in front of him in a usual way. The cheese sandwich first, then 2 with sausage meat, 1 with cold potato and sardines, and the last of all, 1 with marmalade on it. He was completely happy. Little Mai was eating only sardines because she had a feeling it was somehow an unusual evening. She gazed thoughtfully out into the dark of the garden, and her eyes became blacker and blacker the more she thought and the more she ate. The light from the lamp shone on the grass and on the lilac bush, but where it crept in among the shadows, there the groat sat on a hone. It was much weaker. The groat could sit in for so long on the same spot that the ground itself had frozen beneath her. When she stood up and shuffled a little nearer the light, the grass crackled like splintering glass. A whisper of fright rustled through the leaves, and a few curled up and fell from a shoulder of a maple tree onto the shoulders. The asters leaned over as far as they could to get out of the way, and the grasshoppers were silent. Why aren't you eating? Asked Moomin Muma. I don't know, said Moomin Troll. Have we any Venetian blinds? They're in the attic. We shan't need them until we hibernate for the winter. Moomin Mama turned to Moomin Papa and said, wouldn't you like to do some work on your model lighthouse for a while, now the lamp is lit? Huh, said Moomin Papa. It's too childish. It isn't real. The groat shuffled a little nearer. She stared at the lamp and softly shook her big, clumsy head. A freezing white mist hung around her feet as she started to glide towards the light, an enormous, lonely, grey shadow. The winds rattled a little as if there was distant thunder, and the whole garden began to be holding its breath. The groat came close to the veranda and stood quite still just outside the circle of light that shone on the darkened ground. Then she took a quick stride up to the window, and the lamplight fell right on her face. Inside, the quiet little room was suddenly filled with screams and panic-stricken movement. Chairs fell over and someone carried the lamp away. In a few seconds the veranda lay in darkness. Everyone had rushed inside the house, light inside where it was safe, and hidden themselves and their lamp. The groat stood still for a while, breathing frost on the window pane of the deserted room. As she slid away, she merged into the darkness. The grass crackled and snapped under her feet as she passed, and slowly she moved further and further away. With a shudder, the garden dropped its leaves and then breathed again. The groat passed. Thank you for the donations, guys. Thank you. I'll check them out later. It doesn't show me properly. I'll buy Alice something very nice. But it's not quite necessary to barricade ourselves in and stay awake all night, said Moomin Mama. She's probably ruined something out there in the garden again. But she isn't dangerous. You know she isn't, even though she may be frightful. Of course she's dangerous, Moomin Papa shouted. When you were frightened, you were terribly frightened, actually. But you needn't be, as long as I am in the house. But Papa dear, said Moomin Mama, we're afraid of the groat because she's just cold all over, and because she doesn't like anybody. But she's never done any harm. Well, I think it's time we all went to bed. All right, said Moomin Papa, putting the poker back in its corner. Alright, if it's not the slightest bit dangerous, you won't want me to look after you then. That's just fine by me. And with that parting shot, he went onto the veranda, grabbed some cheese and a sausage in passing, and stamped off into the darkness alone. Well, said little Ma, impressed. Good, he's blowing off steam. He'll go and stand guard over that moss till early in the morning. Moomin Mama said nothing. She padded up and down, getting ready for the night. As usual, she looked in her handbag, she turned the lamps down, and all the time there was a silence in the room that didn't seem natural. When she came to Moon Papa's model lighthouse standing on the shelf by the wishstand in the corner, she began to dust it absent-mindedly. Mama, said Moomin Troll. But Moomin Mama wasn't listening. She went up to the big map hanging on the wall, the one showing Moomin Valley with the coast and its islands. She climbed onto a chair that she could reach right out to sea and put her nose right in the spot in the middle of nowhere. There it is, she murmured. That's where we're going to live, and live a wonderful life full of troubles. What did you say? Asked Moomin Troll. That's where we're going to live, repeated Moomin Mama. That's Papa's island. Papa is going to look after us there. We're going to move there and live there all our lives and start everything afresh, right from the beginning. I've always thought that spot was only a little bit of fly dirt, said little Maya. Moomin Mama climbed down to the floor. It takes a long time sometimes, she said. It can take a terrible long time before things sort themselves out. Then she went back into the garden. I'm not saying anything about some mothers and fathers, drawled little May. If I do, the first thing you say is they are never silly. They're up to something, these two. I'd eat a bushel of sand if I knew what it was. You're not supposed to know, said Moomin Troll sharply. They know perfectly well why they're behaving a little oddly. Some people think they're so superior and have to know everything just because they've been adopted. You're dead right, said little Mai. Of course I'm superior. Moomin Troll stared at the spot on the map, far out into the open sea all on its own, and thought Papa wants to live there. That's where he wants to go. They're serious about it. This is a serious game. And suddenly he saw the sea around the island began to rise and fall. The island itself was green with red cliffs. It was the island he had seen in the picture books, a desert island inhabited by pirates. He felt a lump in his throat. Little Mai, he whispered, it's fantastic. You don't say, said little Mai. Everything's fantastic, more or less. The most fantastic thing about it all would be if we were to make a great hullabaloo about getting us and all our paraphernalia there, only to discover that it really was only a bit of fly dirt. I think Alice is asleep already. It's like midnight for her. It could scarcely have been more than 5:30 in the morning when Moomin Troll was following the Groke's tracks through the garden. The ground had thawed again, but he could still see the places where she had sat. The grass there had turned quite brown. He knew that if she sat on the same spot for more than an hour, nothing would ever grow there again. The ground had just died of fright. There were several spots like that in the garden, and the worst one, infuriatingly enough, was in the middle of the tulip bed. A wide path of dry leaves led all the way up to the veranda. That's where she stood. She had remained outside the circle of light and stared at the lamp. She couldn't help it. She had come as close as possible and everything died. It was always the same. Everything she touched just died. Moomin Troll imagined he was the Groke. He shuffled along slowly, all haunched up through a pile of dead leaves. He stood still, waiting while he spread the mist around him. He sighed and stared longingly towards the window. He was the loneliest creature in the whole world. But without the lamp, it was very, very convincing. Instead, only nice thoughts came into his head. Thoughts of islands in the sea and great changes taking place in all their lives. He forgot the Groke and started to play a game as he walked between the long shadows cast by the morning sun. You had to walk only where the sun was shining. The shadows were the unfathomable depths of the sea. That is, of course, if one couldn't swim. Somebody was whistling in the woodshed. Moomin Troll looked inside. Bright gold sunlight shone on a pile of wood shavings by the window, and there was a smell of linseed oil and resin. Moomin Papa was busy putting a little oak door in the walls of his lighthouse. Look at these iron clamps, he said. They're buried in a rock, and this is how you climb up to the lighthouse. You have to be very careful if the weather's rough. No night, darling. See you later, Alice. Have a good sleep, darling. Love you. Okay, I'm going to finish off this next chapter. Boat is carried in towards the rock on the crest of a wave. Then you jump off, get a firm grip and scramble up while the boat is flung back. When the next wave comes, you're safe. Then you fight your way against the wind, holding on to this railing. Then you open a door, but it's heavy. Now it slams behind you. You're inside the lighthouse. You can hear the roar of the sea in the distance through the thick walls. Outside it's roaring all round, and the boat is already a long way off. Are we inside too? Asked Moomin Troll. Of course, said Moomin Papa. You are up here in the tower. Look, every window has real glass. Right at the top is the light itself, and it's red and green and white, and it flashes at regular intervals all night, so that boats know where to go. Are you going to put a real light in it? Asked Moomin Troll. Perhaps you could put a battery underneath and somehow make it flash. Of course I could, said Moomin Papa, cutting some little steps in order to put a light off the lighthouse door. But I haven't time just now. This is only a toy. Actually, just a way of trying things out. Moomin Papa laughed, a little embarrassed, and began poking about in his tool drawer. Wonderful, said Moomin Troll. So long. So long, said Moomin Papa. The shadows were now much shorter. A new day was beginning, just as warm and just as beautiful. Moomin Mama was sitting on the steps doing nothing at all, which seemed very strange somehow. Everybody sat up early this morning, said Moomin Troll. He sat beside her, screwing his eyes up in the sun. Did you know there's a lighthouse on Papa's Island? He said. Of course I did, said Moomin Mama answered. She's been talking about it all summer. That's where we're going to live. There was so much to talk about that nothing was said. It was warm sitting there on the steps. Everything seemed to be so right. Moomin Papa began to whistle, "Anchors away," something he did rather well. I'll make some coffee soon. I just thought I'd sit here and think. It's been quite a night. But the lighthouse was calling to them. They knew they must go to the island, and so and go soon. The end. Right. Night, people. Night, Alice. Take care of each other and yourself.